Am I wrong for throwing away my husband's dinner after he went to eat at his mom's house? My mother-in-law calls every night to ask what we're having for dinner. Then she brags about what she's cooking to make me look bad, especially if we're getting takeout. I used to care, but not anymore. My husband would ask me to make dinner, only for him to go to his mom's house, which is only 10 minutes away, and eat her food. He always tries to use the excuse that she's making my favorite meal. Yesterday, I wanted to surprise him by cooking one of his favorite meals, and although I was busy, I took time off work to cook. I even went grocery shopping to get what I needed. Later, as I was setting the table, his mom called. I told him that he didn't have to answer, but he did. Like usual, she asked what we were having, but acted surprised that I cooked this meal. She then went on to tell him that she cooked some sort of meal and told him to come over. He said okay, which shocked me. I said, seriously? As he started dressing up, getting ready to leave, he told me, no offense, but this meal that his mom had cooked was even more of a favorite than the one I cooked, and grabbed his keys and left. I felt awful. I took his plate and threw it out and then ate my portion. As I was about to put the plate in the dishwasher, he got home looking angry, saying his mom lied about cooking that favorite meal and used it as an excuse to force him to have dinner with her. I was shocked, but then he sat down telling me to go ahead and reheat dinner. Please, okay, your ass left, you ain't getting no dinner. I told him no dinner after he abandoned it and I threw it out. He said, what? And I told him that he disrespected my time and effort by choosing to go eat with his mom instead. He began yelling at me, asking me if I really did that, and then called me petty and horrible, then went upstairs saying what I did was 100 times worse than what his mom did. I definitely feel like I let my anger and frustration get the best of me, but it really felt unbearable having to live like this for so long. By the way, I'm 26 and he's 28. To make one thing clear, my husband only does this when it comes to food.
I, 36 female, have a daughter, Sadie, 12, with my ex-husband, John, 39. We got divorced 5 years ago and I have primary custody while he sees her 2 weekends a month. Last year, he got married to Amanda, who has sole custody of her kids, 10 and 8 female, from a previous marriage. Amanda is a stay-at-home mom, not for any health reasons or so on, she just doesn't want to work, while John works 9 to 5. He makes good money to support them, but not enough to live in luxury. I have a much higher paying job. Since it's just me and Sadie, I make sure that she has the best possible life. She goes to a private school, set up her college fund, and she has much better things than most kids, phones, clothes, etc. I still managed to raise her to be humble and not take things for granted, and she's one of the hardest working people I know, always making sure to get good grades and keep her room tidy. Well, the last few times she came back after a weekend at John's, I noticed that the clothes she was bringing back in her duffel are A, not her size, and B, much cheaper and poorer quality than what I usually buy for her. I asked her why that is, and she told me that while she's at her dad's, Amanda takes away her nice clothes and gives them to her kids while Sadie gets the clothes they buy from Target. I asked her if she wanted them back, but she said that she didn't mind sharing since all of her favorite clothes were kept here. The problem came when I went to pick her up last weekend. I had a business meeting and I couldn't drive her over. Amanda offered to just pick Sadie up from school, which hadn't happened before. When I got there on Sunday, John and Amanda asked me to sit down with them, and when Sadie came to hug me, Amanda sent her to her room quite harshly, saying her punishment wasn't over yet. I was confused because Sadie very rarely misbehaves. They sat me down in the kitchen and said that it was unfair for Sadie to be going to a private school while her kids go to a public one, so they decided that Sadie would be pulled out of private school and put in the same school as the girls. They also said I should keep up Sadie's punishment because when they told her, she blew up at them, told them it wasn't fair, and yelled that Amanda and her kids weren't even her real family, all they did was steal. I told them in no uncertain terms to fuck off. I would not be pulling my child out of a school she likes away from her friends because they can't afford it. I told them that they could easily make as much money as me if Amanda started working in her field because she has the qualifications and the job market is very good. I told them that their money problems are not my issue, and if Sadie's items get stolen again or they try to pull her out of school, I'll be taking this to court. They've been blowing up my phone ever since, calling me a selfish asshole, and after telling the story to my friend, he told me that I was rubbing my success in their face, but I still don't feel like I did anything wrong. Am I the asshole for telling my ex that his lack of money is not my issue?
My husband has a second family. The ultimate cliche has happened in my life, and I'm absolutely broken. My husband, my rock, has been having an affair for over 17 years. We've been married for over 25 years. We have 3 beautiful children, 2 in college, and 1 who still lives at home. But turns out he's had another set this whole time. My husband is an insurance broker, and he has multiple branches over the country, which he spends week on, week off. Turns out on his week off, he's been with his other family in Albuquerque, where his other branch is. He's got a fiance whom he has 2 kids with, both in their early teens. I found out when I went to make a new Facebook account, and when I searched my husband's first name, another profile with another last name popped up, and through that profile were the links to his fiance and his other kids' Facebook. My husband is currently with said family, and I know it's him because his most recent post is a photo of him and that other family eating dinner. Among those photos were photos of him kissing the girl and him being fatherly with the kids who look nearly identical to my husband. I am already broken. Almost every part of me wants to scream in his face and reprimand him for ruining my life, but another part of me wants to pretend to be ignorant and let it be. because our life is peaceful. He's good with our kids. He's the main source of financial income. He's loving, but he's also all those things to another family. Not only would I be tearing a gaping hole in my family, I'd be opening a vortex for them too. My heart is in shambles. I've never cried so much in my life. My youngest son is currently on a graduation trip with friends, and I'm alone till my lying, cheating, bastard husband comes home. My life is absolutely wrecked. It's literally a movie plot. I'm hoping he'll just come home and it'll be a big misunderstanding why he's kissing a woman with a ring on her finger. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm tempted to pack a bag and just leave. I can't be in the home where we've raised our kids, where we've spent every Christmas for the last 26 years, and where I've been alone on New Year's taking care of our babies while he works his ass off. I just can't. I want to leave a note for him to come home to, hurt him like he's hurt me, but I don't think that's possible. I don't know how I'll ever face him again.
Oh my gosh.
I can't imagine being in that situation and having the power over your emotions to say, like, I wish I could just put it and like have him come back. Like you instantly start putting others in front of you.
I don't know how she has such restraint.
Right.
I can't get past the part where she's like, I want to look the other way. That part, I just couldn't. After that, everything kind of became moot to me for some reason, because I was like, the fact that she's even considering that, I feel like this is fully her being a mother and thinking that this is what she needs to do for her family and her children.
It's just at what,
what's
the threshold? Yes. What's the threshold?
Am I the asshole for not letting my daughter choose the theme for her birthday party? I, 29, am the mother of my daughter, Kira. She just turned 6 this past weekend and we had a party with her extended family and friends. Unfortunately, the party was less than her expectations and she hasn't shut up about it, and I'm afraid I might have done something wrong. A few weeks ago, before buying themed invitations and decorations, I asked my daughter what she wanted the party's theme to be so that I could buy the themed invitations and decorations. She said she wanted an Isabella themed party, the name of the minor character in the recent Disney DVD Encanto. I tried to dissuade her from this idea for 2 reasons. Reason 1, which I told her, is that there probably wouldn't be many decorations to buy centered around that character. Reason 2, which I did not tell her, is that I would have intense secondhand embarrassment and surely feel judged by my family, who definitely wouldn't be familiar with such an obscure and uncomfortably recent Disney installment. I decided on a compromise, that we'd have a Disney princess themed party with all the princesses rather than just one. Much to my daughter's dismay though, when the decorations arrived, we determined that none of them featured Isabella. She also wanted me to have her at least dress up as Isabella, but Reason 2. Ultimately, Kira was completely unhappy with her Disney party and the guests weren't much happier. Kira's school friend's mom confronted me after asking my daughter why she had been crying the whole time and in short gave me hell for my party planning decisions. My mother, Kira's biological grandmother, offered to throw a party at her own house the next day and she'd buy every Isabella thing she could find at the store, on one condition, that she bring my daughter and I don't show up at all. But I declined and kind of faked a seizure to avoid any further attacks because I was just completely exhausted. Everyone left while my daughter's face was covered in cake and tears, but mostly anger. I was just trying to do what was best for both my daughter and myself, but everyone ended up disappointed in me.
My boyfriend confessed to me that he's attracted to my best friend. Should I leave him? Disclaimer's not my story time, send me an Instagram. I know you guys are gonna all say yes immediately, but hear me out. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 6 months. My best friend and I actually met him at a bar. That night, I never expected that he would ever come after me. I consider my best friend the prettier of the two of us, so I'm used to her getting hit on instead of me. But that night, my boyfriend came to me. He talked to me pretty much the entire night, and my best friend told me to go for it. So I did. He and I spent the night together, and after that, we were inseparable. To the point where he wanted me to move in with him after 2 months. My parents thought I was absolutely crazy and they didn't want me to move in with him, but I did anyway. I come from a Latino family, so this was absolutely reprehensible. I went against my family's wishes and they actually stopped speaking to me for a little bit, but luckily I got them back. My boyfriend during that time gave me all his support. He told me that my family would come around eventually and that they would see that we were in love. So living together was a logical next step. After 3 months of living together, I knew that I wanted to marry him, and he would talk about marriage all the time. He asked me what kind of ring I would want and what I would want for the proposal. We even started talking about our honeymoon. I was also starting to get in the best shape of my life. I was looking super snatched. My boyfriend told me that he loved the way that I look, but that he didn't want me to get skinny. Again, I just felt like he was supporting me and loving me. Around this time, my best friend started dating somebody. After a few weeks, they got really serious about the relationship. And of course, we went on double dates. After the 3rd double date, I noticed that my boyfriend was getting a little annoyed. I got the feeling he was jealous of my best friend's boyfriend. Follow for part 2. My boyfriend confessed to me that he's attracted to my best friend. Should I leave him? Disclaimer's not my story time, send me on Instagram. I asked him if he was jealous of my best friend's boyfriend, and that's when he said no. But every time we would go on double dates, he would get in such a bad mood. 3 weeks ago, my best friend told me that she was moving in with her boyfriend. And when I told my boyfriend that they were moving in, his face almost went green. I asked him what was wrong and he said nothing. After that, he went into the bathroom and didn't come out for 40 minutes. Again, I asked him if he was okay and he said yeah. And I sat him down and asked him to be honest with me. That's when he said, I'm attracted to your best friend. Instantly started to cry because I had already been suspecting it. He explained to me that he didn't have any feelings for her until she got a boyfriend, and that he felt that he had some sort of ownership over her. Before my best friend got a boyfriend, the 3 of us would hang out a lot. And not once then did I ever get a feeling that he was attracted to her. He told me that he would never act on his feelings, but he didn't want to go on any more double dates. I asked him if he wanted to be with her instead of me, and he said absolutely not. He said that I was the love of his life and that attraction only meant attraction, that he didn't have feelings for her. A few days later, he took me to the most expensive restaurant in our city and asked me to marry him. But I didn't know what to say. I can't stop thinking that he's attracted to my best friend. Part 3 is up.
Boyfriend confessed to me that he's attracted to my best friend. What should I do? Disclaimer is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. After he proposed, I told him I didn't know what to say. He told me to think it over. I finally decided to tell my best friend what my boyfriend had told me. That he had confessed that he was attracted to her. First she laughed. I told her no. I'm serious. He confessed that he's attracted to you. That's when she told me I needed to break up with him. That's when I told her that he had also proposed. And she said, well then you really need to break up with him now. That's when she told me that she didn't want me to resent her and that it was completely out of her control. And I didn't. I promised her that I would never resent her for my boyfriend being attracted to her. It's not like she ever did anything on purpose to make him feel attracted. She also told me that marrying him right now would be rushing into it. And she's kind of right. We've only really known each other for 6 months. Then she told me that she's never gotten the feeling that he's attracted to her. She's never caught him looking at her or anything like that. So now her theory is that he's looking for an easy way out and that he probably wants me to break up with him. But my boyfriend is still sweet and super affectionate. He's constantly showering me with love. My best friend thinks that if I stay with him, our relationship will suffer. I've known my best friend longer. What should I do? Story time about how my fiance is refusing to help me plan our wedding. Should I leave him? Disclaimer, is not my story time and send me on Instagram. I'm so sad about the palette. My fiance and I met a few years ago through friends. When we first met each other, I had a really bad first impression of him. First off, he was completely up himself. All he did was talk about himself and never once asked me questions. We were surrounded by other people, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt when he asked me out. I said yes, but our first date was kind of the same. He only really talked about himself, his career, the things he likes to do, his favorite foods, his family, his dog. I eventually just started volunteering information because he wouldn't really ask me. After our date, I didn't speak to him for a full 2 weeks. I was really turned off by his attitude, but then he messaged me saying that he was really nervous and that he realizes that he probably could have been a little more talkative. I said, yeah, you could have been. I told him how I really felt and he did apologize and he asked me out to dinner again. This time I invited him to my apartment and he made us a full 4-course meal. By the way, he's a chef. Obviously, that night, I completely fell in love with him. He made all of my favorite foods, but the gourmet version. A few months later, we became boyfriend and girlfriend. There were still a few things that I didn't like about him, though. Like, he never really had anything to talk about other than himself. Exactly a year after we met, he decided to propose, and I said yes. But when I asked him to do things for the wedding, he says no. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my fiance is refusing to help me plan our wedding. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent him on Instagram. To be honest, when he asked me to marry him, I was totally blindsided. Honestly, felt like our relationship was starting to get stale. So when he asked me to marry him, I was like, for real? He told me that I was the first person who ever made him feel important. And looking back, I realized that it's because he only talked about himself and I really let him talk about only himself. Anyway, he immediately said yes out of the excitement. But when I called my mom to tell her, I was actually crying, which is like, okay, maybe I shouldn't marry him then. A few weeks into our engagement, we hadn't talked about planning at all. So I decided to ask him, like, what do you want the wedding to be like? That's when he told me that he didn't really care, but that he would just give me money for it. I mean, on one hand, that makes me really happy because I don't want my parents to have to pay for the wedding, and he has a lot of money. But on the other hand, I want him to be involved, especially for the food because he's a chef. I decided to hire a wedding planner because my job is extremely busy. I work in marketing. Asked him to go to a few meetings with me. He said no. When I finally found the perfect wedding planner, I asked my fiance if we could go have lunch with him, and he said no. This is when I blew up in his face. I asked him why he wasn't participating at all. That's when he told me that he was too busy at the restaurant, that he didn't have time to do anything with the wedding. I was like, okay, fine. When it came time to choosing the caterers, I demanded that he go with me. He told me that he would try to get off work, but he never did. Every time I tried to schedule it, he would say that he was busy with work. That's when I told him that his restaurant, which is super fancy, should just cater the whole wedding. And he said no. He told me they were way too busy and ready to get a Michelin star, so there was absolutely no way they could cater his wedding. That's when he said, you can handle it, I trust you. I went home and cried the entire night. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my fiance refuses to help me plan our wedding. Claimers to know my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. After I got home and cried, he came home and asked me what was wrong. That's when I told him that he didn't seem excited about the wedding and that leaving all the planning to me made me feel like I was his employee, as if I had nothing better to do, which I do have my career just like he has his. Not to mention the fact that me picking everything I want for our wedding makes it feel like it's my wedding and not ours. He told me that I was overreacting. He also said that he was excited for the wedding, but that he was too tired and too busy to even think about it. That's when I told him that I was really busy and I was really tired too. And he begrudgingly told me that he would carve out some time this week so that we could speak to some of the caterers. I told the wedding planner and he started setting up some meetings. But of course, my fiance canceled on the first 2. He did show up to the 3rd one, but all he did was criticize the food. Then we went cake tasting. I expected this to be fun. When my friends have had cake tastings for their wedding, they always have so much fun. As soon as we showed up to the cake shop, he asked me, where did you find this? That's when I told him that our planner had found it. He said it looked like a supermarket bakery. That's when I told him that I don't mind supermarket bakeries and that it was probably just as good as a French bakery. He laughed and said, wow, you're funny, babe. We tasted the cakes and he actually liked them. Thank God. But then he requested to go to more cake tastings. We ended up going to 5 other places. This was already too much for me. I got a new account at work and I'm still trying to lose weight for the wedding. So him making me run around trying to taste cake is like the straw that broke the camel's back. After 2 weeks, we finally decided on a cake flavor. Most people must have fun planning their weddings, right? But I just feel like I'm drowning. I have to make all the important decisions on my own. I decided to involve my mom and sister and they've helped me so much. Of course, the wedding planner is helping me too, but ultimately the decisions have to be made by me. He hasn't made any effort to help me with anything else. Kinda want to break up with him, but I feel like this isn't a big enough reason to break up with him. What should I do? secretly hate my husband, but I can't leave him. Disclaimer is not my story time. Listen to me on Instagram. My husband and I have only been married for 2 months. We dated on and off for almost 7 years. So when he finally proposed, I was actually really happy. The problem is that we never lived together before we got married. He never wanted to move in with me when we were dating. He also had this thing where he wouldn't want me to come to his apartment randomly. He would always schedule times where I could hang out with him at his apartment. This all seems suspicious, but I really wanted to marry him, so I just decided to overlook those things. But now that we're married, I see why he didn't want me to come over and why he had all these strange rules. It turns out that he's incredibly messy, lazy, and is super picky about the food he eats. So now that I'm his wife, I'm constantly having to clean up after him. Every single time he goes to the toilet, he always leaves skid marks, or for some reason, he always has like explosive poop and it goes everywhere on the bowl. So every single time I go to the bathroom after he does, I'm always having to clean it up. And it makes me so angry that I have to clean up after him that I have begun to hate him. Also, he's super picky about his food. We can never go to restaurants because he never wants anything on the menu. And if we ever do go to a restaurant, we have to go wherever he wants. I love all types of cuisine, especially Indian, Mediterranean, Japanese, but he thinks it's gross. He comes from a very American family. He grew up eating chicken nuggets and grilled cheeses. To him, anything with some spice is way too much. That means I can't cook what I want because he always complains about the smell. Thankfully, he's got an office that's 30 minutes away. So when he leaves, that's when I cook. But I have to make sure to air out the apartment before he gets home. I'm always doing his laundry and cleaning up after him. Every single time he shaves, he leaves hair everywhere. I actually hate this man now. I told him that I don't want to live with him anymore, but he freaked out. He's begging for me to stay, but I'm so unhappy. What should I do? Am I the asshole for cutting off my jealous mom? When I was going through puberty, my mom started comparing my body to hers. She would say things like, you know what, it's okay that you're not developing as quickly as I did, but that her boobs were already much bigger than mine were when I was 14. Here's a little backstory on my family. My mom has always been extremely dramatic and I think toxic. I feel bad calling her toxic. On the other hand, I have a great relationship with my dad. And my 2 siblings are both guys, so they don't have the same experience I did with my mom. My dad always acted as a buffer between me and my mom, even though my mom was the one that was starting all the fights. When I got into high school, I realized how attractive I was. Honestly, I had no clue that I was even a pretty girl. Looking back now, I realized that my mom really did make me feel like I was less than. When I started getting attention from boys in high school, I was really happy. I finally felt like I was seen. And because my mom wasn't there, I was able to thrive. Whereas in my house, I would even dress down in front of my mom just so that she wouldn't get jealous of me. The first time I brought a boy over to our house, my mom totally flipped out. She said that I was acting like an SLUT, but really, this boy was only a friend. My dad, thank God, told her that she needed to relax and that I was allowed to have friends. Eventually, I started dating a boy behind my mom's back. I did tell my dad, though. My dad was actually happy for me. This boyfriend was like my best friend. I could tell him everything, and he always responded really positively and gave me really good advice about my mom. But one day, one of my brothers let it slip that I had a boyfriend. My mom punished me for an entire month. My dad tried to intervene, but my mom went crazy. Here's the thing. She made me break up with him, and then I caught her flirting with him. Part 2 is up. Am I the asshole for cutting off my jealous mom? When I caught her flirting with my now ex, who she made me break up with, I pretended like I didn't hear her. But she was flirting with him. She told him that he had really good muscles and that he looked a lot older than he was. Thank God, my ex didn't respond and went home. Afterwards, I confronted my mom and told her that I overheard the conversation. She told me that I was being a snob. I didn't talk to her for about 3 days. On the 3rd day, she came crying to my room. She wanted us to make up. So she decided to take me shopping at the mall. Being the toxic person that she is, she managed to make everything about her. Tried on a bunch of clothes, which actually did look really good on her. Oh, by the way, my mom was a model back in the 90s, so she's kind of stuck in that mindset. She thinks she's the most beautiful person. She thinks she's the best. Anyway, when it was my turn to try on some clothes, she said that I looked a little too tubby, that I should maybe lose a few pounds. I told her that she hurt my feelings and she instantly apologized. Our relationship kept going like this up until I was 18. When I finally moved away for college, I was the happiest I'd ever been. Being away from my mom was like a breath of fresh air. But of course, it never stopped. My mom decided to come visit me to college and I knew that I needed to be prepared for that. When she came over to my dorm, I made sure it was super clean. Also, my grades were super good and I basically had a few friends but no boyfriend. When she came over to my apartment, she was like, "Oh, it's so simple." I was like, "What do you mean?" She said that I needed to decorate and show my personality more. She stayed with me for a total of 3 days and the whole time I was grinding my teeth. When she finally left, I was happy again. Then my dad came to visit. Hanging out with my dad was the best. Took me shopping for my apartment and made me feel so at home. My mom got jealous. Part 3 is Am I the asshole for cutting off my jealous mom? Disclaimers is not my story time. It's that I mean on Instagram. Then she somehow managed to get jealous that my dad and I were getting along super well. She called my dad while my dad was visiting me and threw a tantrum about how she needed him to go home. So my dad cut his trip short just to go be with my insecure mother. After that, I really didn't speak to my mom for about 2 months. I couldn't believe that she always managed to make me feel less than. And somehow she always made everything about her. I reached out to my brothers and asked them if they ever felt the same about my mom, and they said no. My mom was totally different with them. She took care of them and doted on them. Probably because they're boys and not me, because I'm a girl. One day I decided to call my grandmother and I told her everything. That's when my grandma told me that my mom has always been that way and that I just shouldn't take it personally. Apparently when my mom was growing up, she did not have any girlfriends. She always liked staying away from other women to not have any competition. But I told my grandma that she's my mom and that she shouldn't see me as competition. Grandma suspects that something is wrong with my mom, so, I don't know if she's bipolar or something, but obviously I can't diagnose her. Thankfully, I have other women in my life, my grandma and 2 of my aunts. They act like my moms more than my own mother. When I graduated college, I was actually engaged. My fiance and I bought a house and we started planning our wedding. And of course, my mom wanted to help me plan it. I really didn't want this, but I decided to give her a chance. But once again, she managed to make everything about her. The entire time, she criticized my choices, even my wedding dress, which I absolutely loved, and it really did look good on me. She told me I needed to wear something more flattering. And then she ended up wearing my wedding dress in a different color. After the wedding, I decided to tell my dad and my brothers that I was going to cut my mom off. My dad begged me not to, but I still went ahead and did it. I called my mom and told her that I needed some time apart from her and that I did not want her calling me. Of course, she pretended like she had never done anything wrong in my life and that she's only been the perfect dedicated mother that she wishes she could be. Instead of arguing with her, I told her to just give me some space. She agreed to it and I haven't spoken to her in about 3 months. My dad and grandma keep begging me to talk to her. I don't think my mom is sad at all. She's always posting to her Instagram. She goes to Pilates, brunch with her friends, and travels with my dad. I think she's probably fine, but what should I do? Fiance faked being rich just to get me to marry him. Should I leave him? My fiance has lied to me literally over hundreds of times. It all started when he and I met 3 years ago. I was turning 32 and going through a divorce, so I had no intention of ever getting into another relationship, at least not for a long time. I come from a really wealthy family, so I inherited a lot of money when I turned 18. That never stopped me from getting a job. I started working in fashion and it was amazing. Eventually, I became a stylist and had my own business. My relationship with my then husband was not going well, so we decided to get a divorce. But my ex-husband and I never really had hard feelings and we stayed friends. At the time I was living in New York and had tons of friends. Every single weekend I was going out. And since I was single, I literally had nobody to answer to. My friends and I would go to exclusive clubs and restaurants every single night. This is how I met my compulsive liar of a fiance. He was friends with somebody in my friend group. Now, everyone in my group was pretty wealthy. We all drove expensive cars, owned our own businesses, and we worked really hard. One of my friends introduced me to him, and within the first 5 minutes of our conversation, he told me that he was a Calvin Klein model. Of course, I believed it because he was really attractive. And he basically asked me how much money I made a year. And I was honest with him. I earned around 300 grand a year. That's when he told me that he was a millionaire. Follow for part 2. My fiance faked being rich just so that I could marry him. Should I leave him? Very first night I met him, he told me that he was a millionaire and that he was a Calvin Klein model. Of course, I believed him because he was just that attractive. Then he asked me how much I earned per year, and I told him the truth, $300,000. Look on his face was of utter shock. He told me he almost couldn't believe that I would make that much money. And he started talking about how he's a millionaire and he models and he travels around the world. I was actually impressed. Later that night, I asked the friend that introduced me to him if it was all true. She said, yeah, he posts about it on his Instagram, so I think so. Went to the bathroom and started looking him up on Instagram, and it looked like it was true. He did model for Calvin Klein and was modeling around the world. But honestly, from his Instagram, I really couldn't gather if he was a millionaire or not. It's not like he was posting pictures of him in a Maybach or anything. That very same night, he asked me if he could come to my apartment, and I said no. The very next day, he asked me out on a date, and I said yes. Ended up going to a really fancy restaurant, and he paid for the bill. When the bill came, it was over $1,000. Ordered so many things off the menu. What I really didn't like was that he barely touched any of the food. The rest of the week, he invited me to all these different restaurants. On our second week, I asked him if he wanted to come to my place to have dinner, which he did. And the look of his face when he showed up to my apartment was like shocked. Finally, he asked me how much my rent was. That's when I told him I didn't pay rent. I owned the apartment. That's when he said, yeah, I own my own place too. And then I asked him, why haven't you invited me to your apartment? He said that he was getting renovations done. Exactly a month into us dating, he asked me to be his girlfriend and I said yes. Oh, I had not been to his apartment at this point. He had been paying for everything. Follow for part 3. Fiance fake being rich to get me to marry him. Should I leave him? At this point, he had been paying for everything. Every single time we went to dinner, any date we ever went on, he paid for everything. About 2 months into our relationship, I asked him again if I could go to his apartment. That's when he made up another excuse. Told me the contractor that was doing all the renovations in his apartment basically bailed on him. So his apartment was basically in shambles. I told him that I actually knew a contractor who could help him out. And he told me not to worry about it, that he had it covered. The very next week, he had prepared an elaborate proposal. He took me to Central Park where he had a band. He gave me a 3-carat pink diamond ring. Of course, I said yes. I was so happy. Never thought I'd find love again. After the engagement, I told him that we should just move in together. That's when he said, perfect, I can move into your place next week. I was like, what? He said that he actually wanted to sell his apartment. So I said yes. And the very next week, he moved into my place. When he showed up to my apartment, he literally only had 2 suitcases. And most of the clothes were kind of old and raggedy. I asked him where all of his stuff was, and he said, this is it. That's when I started getting really suspicious. I called his modeling agency, and they told me that they hadn't worked with him in 3 years. So apparently he wasn't really a model. Confronted him and asked him what was going on. He confessed that he hadn't modeled in years. That when he met me, he was so impressed that he needed to tell me something to impress me. He told me he had a lot of credit card debt and that he actually couldn't afford the lifestyle he was showing me. Then he also told me that he never even had an apartment. He was sleeping on his friend's couch. I told him I couldn't marry him or trust him, and that he was probably only after my money. He swears that he loves me. No, he hasn't asked me for money, and he's offering to actually pay for rent. My friends and family think I should leave him, but I love him and I'm so attracted to him. What should I do?
Story time about how I kissed every teacher I ever had a crush on and never got caught. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. Growing up, I was a spoiled brat. My parents gave me literally everything I ever wanted. For my 15th birthday, I told my dad that if he didn't get me a BMW, I would run away. So on my 15th birthday, I got the BMW. My parents never said no to anything. One time I told my parents I wanted to have a party at my house and they said no. I threw a tantrum and started to cry. My dad pulled out his credit card and told me to stop crying and I could go buy whatever I wanted. And I pretty much maxed out his card. He did punish me for a month, but all he really took away was the TV. As you can see, I was completely entitled. And yes, looking back, I would love to punch myself. I was a complete brat. When I got into high school, I went boy crazy. My parents told me they did not want me having boyfriends, but of course, I put up a fight. They had no choice but to let me have boyfriends. I would bring them over to my house all the time, and I would always take them up to my room and lock our door. My dad told me one time to open the door, and I wouldn't, so he just left me. Eventually, I got bored with all my boyfriends, so I would just break up with them. But one day, this new high school teacher comes in. We made eye contact for about 5 seconds. I was obsessed. Follow for part 2. Story time about how I kissed every high school teacher I had a crush on and never got caught. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. After we locked eyes for about 5 seconds, he looked away. But I was totally obsessed. He was like the most perfect guy I'd ever seen. And the first thing I did was go to his classroom. I knocked on the door and as soon as he saw me, he smiled and said, come in. We talked for about 2 minutes and he told me that he was only substituting. So I knew I needed to make my move really quick. Fortunately, I was not taking the classes that he was substituting, but I had to find a way to get close to him. So I started watching everything that he did. My school had a big outdoors area and there were lots of tables around. And I noticed that he would go behind the library to eat his lunch. So I started going behind the library to eat my lunch. I decided to get there before he did so that it would be a coincidence. As soon as he saw me, he waved, but he sat at another table. So I grabbed my food and went over to sit with him. That's when I started asking him if he had a girlfriend. He got super red. This guy was blushing. And I knew right away that he probably had a crush on me. He basically didn't give me a yes or a no about the girlfriend, but I didn't care. But I didn't want to make my move right away. I said for the next 3 days, I sat with him at lunch. Finally, he asked me, don't you have friends? And I said yes, but they're all annoying. That's when I leaned in for the kiss. And no, he did not pull away. The kiss lasted for about 10 seconds. As soon as we pull away, he starts looking around to see if anybody saw. And he told me that I need to find someone my own age. By the way, he was 24, I was 17. Next day at lunch, I asked him if he wanted to go to my car. And we ended up kissing 3 more times that day. That's when he asked me for my phone number. Follow for part 3. Story time about how I kissed every teacher I had a crush on and never got caught. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. As we were sitting in my car kissing, he asked me for my number. Gave him my number and that's when he said that because he's only a substitute teacher, we could still hang out outside of school. And I said, of course. The following week, he was gone because the teacher he was substituting for was back. No, he never called me. A few months later, we had another substitute teacher. And this guy was also really good looking. He wasn't as good looking as the first one, but good enough to distract me. This time I got lucky. He was substituting for drama. And I took drama twice a week. So I knew that I was going to be seeing him often. First thing I needed to do was get him to notice me. But this took a lot longer than the other guy. For the first week, I would just try to talk to him, but he was not having it. He would literally tell me to just go sit down. But I couldn't give up. One day after class, I decided to stay late. I knew that he would be staying late as well, so I knew that was my in. I went up to him and asked him if I could help him out. He said yes, and he basically told me to put away some of the costuming. As we were doing that, I just started talking to him. And I swear to God, for a minute, this guy forgot that I was a student. We started talking about everything. By the end of the conversation, he told me that I was really mature and that I made him laugh. So the next day, I stayed after school with him again.
again. This time we were backstage organizing props, and we were completely isolated. That's when I told him that I thought he was really cute and that he was probably a good kisser. Then he walks up to me and kisses me. Oh my god, the butterflies in my stomach. When he stopped kissing me, I pulled him in and kissed him again. That's when he came to his senses and told me that I needed to go home. So I did, and the following week he was not there. Apparently he had a family emergency, but we know it's a lie. Looking back on my behavior, I'm totally horrified. Where did I get the courage to do all the things I did? I never spoke to any of them again, but I did see one of them on Instagram. I did not follow him. He's now got a big beer belly. Ew. Definitely don't do what I did. If I could go back, I would not have done it. Bye. I'm being accused of rape and I don't know if I actually did it. Am I the asshole? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. This all started 2 years ago at a party. 2 years ago, my friends called me up and told me they had a party to go to. Ironically, I did not want to go to this party. I felt really tired from work and I just wanted the night off to chill. That's until my friend called me and told me that the girl that I liked would be at the party. Here's a little backstory on the girl and me. Her and I met through mutual friends, and from the moment that I met her, I really liked her. The night I met her, I asked her out and she said no. So I left it at that. Of course, my feelings didn't change for her. I still liked her. Anytime I would see her at parties or friends' houses, we would always chat. I never asked her out again, but she could clearly tell that I still liked her. I had a bad habit of staring at her. So when my friend told me that she'd be at the party, I decided to go. As soon as we got to the party, I saw that she was talking to this one guy. Now I have to confess, it made me really angry. This is when I decided to have a few beers. Now here's when things start going bad. I'm starting to get tipsy and my friends start telling me to go talk to her. I said no, but they insisted. Instead of sticking to my guns, I decided to do what my friends wanted me to do. I walked up to this girl, not even saying hello, and I said, "Are you dating this guy?" While this guy is standing right next to us. That's when she pushes me aside and says, "It's none of your business." Part 2 is I'm being accused of rape and I don't know if I actually did it. Am I the asshole? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. That's when she pushes me to the side and tells me it's none of my business. That's when the guy that was standing next to her tells me to leave. So I did. I walked back to my friends completely defeated and embarrassed. I felt humiliated. Almost 5 minutes later, she comes up to me and apologizes. She said, "I'm sorry I pushed you." I told her it was okay and if we could just talk. We went to the backyard and I asked her why she wasn't interested in me. That's when she told me that she had been in an abusive relationship and she wasn't looking for anything else. I told her that I wasn't looking for a relationship either and that I just really liked her. Basically, I just wanted to hang out with her. She said she wanted to stay away from guys for now, and I said why. And that's when she kissed me. I was completely shocked. I was not expecting that. Now I could tell that she had been drinking too because she was a little tipsy, so I kissed her back. I could hear my friends cheering in the background. They're such idiots. So I asked her if she wanted to go somewhere more private. We ended up going to one of the bedrooms in the house, and we kept on kissing. At this point, she did not say no. It felt like she wanted it just as much as I did, and we went for it. And to be honest, it only lasted about a minute. After we finished, we kissed and we went back to the party. She held my hand for the rest of the night. In my eyes, things had gone pretty good. But then my worst nightmare began. Part 3 is up. I'm being accused of rape and I don't know if I actually did it. Am I the asshole? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. After we did the deed, she held my hand for the rest of the night. And there were witnesses to her kissing me and holding my hand that night. A few moments later, she completely disappeared. I didn't see her at all for the next 3 days. I decided to call her the next day, but she did not answer her phone. I also sent her messages, but she didn't text back. 4 days later, I get a knock on my door. And it's her dad. And that's when he told me that his daughter was accusing me of rape. I was in complete shock when he said that. Then he asked me what my version was. I told him exactly what happened and he said that she probably said no and I kept going. I told him that at no point did she say no and that people had seen us kissing and holding hands throughout the night. Then he said I took advantage of her being drunk, but she wasn't even that drunk. He also said she was probably so drunk that she didn't even realize she was holding my hand. Here's the thing. After he left, I sat down and started thinking about the entire night. And I really started thinking back. Did she say no? Did she tell me to stop? I was drunk at the time, but I swear to God she didn't, or at least I didn't hear her say it. Her body language wasn't saying stop. Here's the thing. My parents have a lot of money. Now they're asking my parents to just give them lots of money and that they'll drop everything. My parents are just going to pay them the money. What should I do? Is it wrong that my boyfriend wants me to watch rape corn? Huge trigger warning here. Please do not watch if you are sensitive to this. Take care of yourselves. I love you. My boyfriend and I have been together for 8 months. I just turned 21 and he's 33. He's always kind of been the perfect boyfriend, but a few months ago he started acting more like my dad. Started with him just telling me what to do, and then eventually he started trying to give me advice about everything I did. For example, he'd tell me how I needed to talk to my landlord and small things like that. And now I feel like it's gotten to the point where he wants to completely control me. Now here's the thing. I'm young and I don't know if I'm just overreacting or if I'm reading too much into this, but I know that sometimes he makes me feel really uncomfortable. Only 2 months after dating, he asked me to marry him, and I didn't say yes right away, and this really upset him. He accused me of wanting to stay single so that I could date other guys. I told him that I thought I was too young to get married, and that we needed to get to know each other before we talked about marriage. But here's the thing. He started getting so upset that eventually I said yes. So as of now, we're kind of engaged, but I don't really want to. He wants us to go buy a ring, and he wants to formally ask my parents. I called my parents to tell him about it, and they were totally against the idea. I agree with my parents. I haven't told my boyfriend, but things get worse. Started showing me the corn he watches. When I didn't want to watch it, he got really mad at me. Part 2 is up. Is it wrong that my boyfriend wants me to watch rape corn when he wants to do sexy time? Huge trigger warning. Please don't watch this if you are sensitive. Take care of yourselves. I love you. I was laying on the bed and he flipped his laptop over. That's when he says, here, watch this. It was kind of like regular corn. Nothing too disturbing, but it made me feel really uncomfortable. Told him it looked funny and he said, why would it look funny? You don't like it? That's when I said, not really. At that point in my life, I had never looked up anything related to corn. It's not something that I was interested in. So I felt really uncomfortable. He turned the computer on and I couldn't see the screen anymore. For the next 3 hours, he stayed on his laptop in his room watching corn. I felt like I was interrupting him. I went to the kitchen and decided to cook. Dinner was ready. I asked him to come eat and he left me waiting another hour. When he finally comes out, his face was completely changed. And for the rest of the night, he was really quiet and kind of rude. A few days later, he brought up the engagement again. He asked me if I had time to go look at rings and reluctantly, I said yeah. He went into a jewelry store and he told me to just choose one. I told him that I didn't want to rush it and he said, it's fine, just choose it now. Later on that night, I asked him to drop me off at my place, but he said he wanted me to stay over at his. When we get to his apartment, he gets on his laptop again. That's when he shows me what he was watching. It was rape corn. He tried to kiss me and I felt sick to my stomach. Part 3 is it wrong that my boyfriend wants to watch rape corn when he wants to do sexy time? Huge trigger warning here. Please do not watch this if you are sensitive. Take care of yourselves. I love you. That's when he showed me the rape corn on his laptop. And he just lunged at me and tried to kiss me. I felt sick to my stomach. He asked me to sit on the bed, but I said no. That's when he said why. I told him I wasn't comfortable with what he was watching and that I really didn't like it at all. Then he just rolled his eyes and got mad at me. For the next 5 minutes, he called me a prude and told me that what he was doing was completely normal. And I guess part of me really did want to believe him and he managed to convince me. I asked him to close the laptop because I could hear the noise. He said I was overreacting and told me to go home. So I did. Didn't speak to him for 3 days until finally he came over to my place. He acted like nothing had happened. Now here's the thing. I don't know if it's a normal thing or not, but I don't think it is. I haven't Googled it or anything because I don't want to, but I also haven't talked about it to anybody. What scares me is that he's gonna want to do stuff like that and I'm not comfortable with it. It also concerns me that he has fantasies about that. That's something I would never ever want him to do. I made us dinner in my apartment and I decided to bring up the topic. That's when he said, can you just get over it? It's done. But I kept pushing and asked him some questions. I asked him how long he'd been watching that and if it made him, you know what. He said he'd only been watching it for a few days and that he already stopped and that he wouldn't do it again. Then he said, you have to stop being a prude. I want to be with somebody who's willing to try new stuff. Otherwise, I'd probably end up cheating. This actually really scared me, so I told him that I would try anything as long as I was comfortable with it. I don't want him to leave me because I do love him, but what he was watching on his laptop really made me nervous. I don't think I have the courage to break up with him or anything, and I do want to be with him. I just want to find a way to help him with this and not make it a big deal. I haven't told anybody in my family or my friends. Maybe I should just to see what their reaction is. What should I do? Bye.